Help protect us from racism and xenophobia by becoming an I Love Black People ambassador today. Join on iloveblackpeople.com. No matter where you are in the world, join us today and get access to the I Love Black People
Greetings
network.
and welcome to
Special thanks
another
to
edition of I
Vanderbilt
Love Black
Communities.
People. And we're so thankful and proud to have you with us. And without you, we couldn't do this. And all the people who've been reaching out, giving us information that we can use to improve and to continue to give us content to inspire us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please, definitely, anyone and all the folks that are listening, if you don't know, info@iloveblackpeople.com is the best email for us. Let us know what you're thinking, what's on your mind, what's happening. We also have our phone number, 202-558-5143. That's 202-558-5143. And, leave us a message if we don't pick up. And this is, it's about us. I always end this with, I am because we are, therefore I am. This would not be possible without you. So we're definitely grateful. And we got so much to talk about, just so much going on. I was literally actually in South Africa when the word came out that President Joe Biden had stepped down and had gave the nod to Kamala Harris to replace him. And, there had been speculation. And I still, wonder what was behind the scenes that allowed that to transpire. And I know people say it was his speech, his debate with Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, I've been in politics and activism since probably 1988. My first campaign I worked nationally on was in Alabama for Jesse Jackson. And my mentor, Latrice Rutland, was working with I think it was the New South Coalition. There was two Democratic parties at that time that were vying for the energy and leadership of Alabama. And one of the things people don't talk about with Jesse, he may not have money on his campaign, but he was able to give Black people titles and positions that these Democratic state committees never would give Black folks, especially in the Deep South. So even though Blacks were almost 100% Democrats, even by the 80s, they were not in key positions, but they did the work, but they weren't recognized. Jesse made sure he recognized all our brothers and sisters, and even if he couldn't give them a big salary, they sure enough had a big title and were giving a lot of responsibility and acknowledgement for those roles. So shout out to Jesse as he, reaches a certain point in his life, and again, he's lived a life worth living as it relates to the struggles of our people, and just really just bringing up my origin story with Jesse is just, it reminds me of so many other stories that I could relate to in regards to presidential elections. But that being said, it'd be malpractice if you had a candidate that wasn't necessarily great at debating, giving an opportunity for their opponent to debate them. If you're an incumbent, this is just to help out anyone who's aspiring to be in politics and deal with the politics of politics. If you're an incumbent, there's really no reason to give your opposition opportunities to do things and say things to you and put them on the stage to give them the status that you have. Many times, there will be incumbent candidates that avoid debating entirely. Like there's no, if you're your name is already recognized, you're already in the position. Debates give your opponents or the other candidates platforms to be heard on when they normally wouldn't. If you're an incumbent, you have a bully pulpit. So, just whatever you say is being already followed and in the spotlight. It's the folks who are trying to get to where the incumbent is that are trying to have their voices heard. And if you have someone who's not admitted that you beat them in the last election, they still haven't admitted that they lost, you can easily use that as a justifiable reason why I'm not going to debate this person until they recognize that I defeated them as president and that they lost. You can literally have that as like a sound rationale that normal people who aren't in politics, why would he debate someone who doesn't even recognize that they lost to get them in the first place? So that's one thing. And then two, most debates, if not all those type of presidential debates take place after all the conventions are over. Because it's not until the convention that you actually have a nominee for the actual position. Up until the debate, all they were people who had been through a primary process and received certain numbers of votes. But again, they weren't nominated yet until they go to the convention. So for him for Biden to take that, knowing that he may not have either been feeling well or not been up to it, there was no reason that he had to give that. And I just still wonder what was behind the rationale of the people. And I've had people say, "Oh, politicians have big egos. He thought he could." I'm gonna tell you, you know what you got and what you don't have, and all politicians have egos. I mean, anytime you have someone who's willing to put their name on your chest and your shirt and on caps and all that, it takes a level of ego to be able to be in that space with people running around with your name on their shirt. That being said, it's up to the campaign to also be there to manage the candidate. And if you know the candidate is not probably, maybe you have a candidate that's really good with the one on one. Put them in rooms where they can actually shake hands, kiss babies, and kind of do that one on one. If you know your person's better in like doing like mass, communications, have his rallies as much as you can. But you literally are using the tools that you're working with. Every candidate is not the same, and everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. And it's up to an effective campaign, which is why they pay these people. And every time you hear these campaigns asking for money, okay, that money's going somewhere. So don't think it's just like a spooky cloud up there where all the money goes. This money is going in the pockets of particular people buying ads. They got buyers doing that. You got folks on the ground, mobilizing, organizing. All these folks are getting checks, but those checks are there so that you can get the best of the best to work with your candidate. And if you know your candidate is not up to a debate, especially when they're not even nominated, and literally they're dealing with a person who hasn't recognized that they lost and had an incursion, trying to overthrow the whole world in January 6th. And in addition to that, this person's going through legal trouble. So putting them on the stage with your candidate makes them look presidential again, when all these other things should at least discredit them to some degree, to the point where you need them to come to you and say, "Hey, please let me debate you," with some level of humility for all the insults and all the accusations that were made. None of that was done. There was a debate, and it was horrible. And I never saw the media so quickly go from pro Biden to anti Biden. Like, I hadn't heard CNN or MSNBC or any of these, besides Fox, say anything bad about Biden. But after that debate, it was just like amazing. Every time I turned on the TV, and I still, like I said, was in South Africa, they just literally came out. No, I was in the States when the actual debate, but literally, like, every channel kept saying something negative. And then following the debate, every time he was in the public eye, the scrutiny, of the media that had been pro Biden, it was like vicious. Like, did he just stutter? And they already had told us he had a stutter. Like, did he just stumble a little bit? It was literally like an onslaught of just, pointing out every gaffe, every mistake he was making. And, if you're a campaign and your candidate may be dealing with something in a way that having them get interviewed is not helpful, well, don't let them get interviewed. I mean, this person's the president of the United States. They're already in office. They're actively being president. You don't have to do an interview. You can wait for an interview until after your nomination. Hey, I'm saving it for the convention. I want to talk about. I'm focused on the issues of facing the country right now. I mean, anything, because it makes sense. There's all these military conflicts going on. It easily could have been said, "Hey, look, I'm focusing on the day in and day out. I'll give you a campaign speech and interview after the convention." And no one, what could they argue with that? It's been the president. But, again, he had a campaign and they were getting paid to handle him as a candidate, and it is what he is. And, the good news is we have someone that's a Howard alum that's amazing, will be the first black woman president, first woman president, first black woman president in the history of the planet for the United States. And Mexico actually elected one first, but this will be the first one for the United States, not the first one in North America. But with that being said, we're definitely happy. And, now that she's gone through the nomination process, all those delegates were able to take their votes, and they've shown their support. And now we have uh, Vice President Kamala Harris as our nominee for president. And the Tim Walz guy seems like a pretty snazzy guy himself. Heard some folks talking about what he did with the George Floyd case as it relates to being, again, some of the bar is low because we're used to just white supremacist ideology and everything. But they said he was just fair with how they tried to resolve the issues of the community as well as dealing with law enforcement. So, again, I think these are all elements that are helpful. And as we've said in other shows, we're not waiting for elections to save us. We're not waiting for a politician to save us. We have to work together to save ourselves. With that being said, having a graduate of a historically black college and university, that does a lot to validate to black people the power of our education system that we've had for now over 100 years, that we produce presidents now. Like that's a real thing. We have actually produced presidents of other countries. Kwame Nkrumah went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, so we've produced presidents of countries before as HBCUs, but we're now producing presidents of the United States, the U.S. president. And with that being said, we've produced presidents of other countries. This is a powerful affirmation to what the struggles of our people have had in order to do so. And I've had people, talk about, is she black or what is black? And I tell people, I don't, I love black people. I have people who say, well, I'm not black, that's a color, or they call themselves a number of things. And I say this with the utmost humility. I think everyone deals with their identity the best they can through the trauma we've experienced. We all know race is a construct, it's made up. And even when we start talking about these nation states, the United States of America, we know this is a settler colony. Like the original people who lived here did not call this the United States. The borders in Africa weren't made by African people. The borders in South America and Central America weren't made by the indigenous people. They were made by people who colonized them. So even honoring and referencing these borders or the islands as your identity, there's so many ways people could go and say, well, that's not technically who you are. All that being said, I'm clear that our sister's a black woman, and I'm so grateful that she's a fellow Howard alum. She's a Kappa sweetheart. She's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She has done us proud with the legacy that she has laid, a body of work that she's created in service. And I think that's something powerful about HBCUs. What we've contributed as HBCUs to this society, we've always out punched our weight. Like what we see, in spite of what we've had to go through, and she's got to go through misogyny and sexism as well as these other issues that I can't necessarily understand or relate to directly, but understand how powerful it is to be able to get to where she is and be that person, and to be again, a U.S. senator from California, one of the largest economies in the world. that's like a serious thing. And so to be in this position to be vice president and then navigate that as well as she has, and I tell people, remember the Constitution doesn't say we have co-presidents. She's the vice president. And constitutionally, she has no way to override the president. He doesn't have to listen to her, or she doesn't have a vote in the cabinet per se. She has a vote in the Senate. So, in a real way, what she's done has been amazing. And she doesn't come from a family that, like the Bushes or even Hillary Clinton. Her husband had been president before. Like, just think about that. Like, up until she was first lady, she had never been elected to any office. So after she was first lady, she became a senator of New York, and she's not even from New York. And then she ran for president. And so she had at least a machine behind her that had already been operating. Kamala doesn't have that. She came from two immigrant people who fell in love in the United States. Now, how did that story end up being a presidential one? It doesn't sound like one. It sounds like a romantic story, maybe, but not a story of a next president of the United States. A future president of the United States would come from that. And that's why I think it's important to understand even the context of the HBCU, Historical Black College, to literally, propel the best of the best and make sure they know that the sky is not the limit. There's nothing that we can't do. And, in this time where, people are going back to school, Kamala Harris is someone who represents that. But let's be clear now, and I definitely know because I was at the convention. It was great. Actually, it was my wedding anniversary was the same week. So my wife always wanted to go see the glaciers. So we went to Alaska and we had a layover in Chicago. So on the way back, my wife went back to DC and I stayed in Chicago for that Wednesday and Thursday, the two key days of the convention. And we had some students from Harris Stowe. I pledged Big Money Box and Beta Nu, a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, and our city chapter was founded at a historically Black college called Harris Stowe Teachers College. And now it's Harris Stowe State University. And we had 4 students, young brothers, come up, and they literally were getting people to download our app, the I Love Black People app. And if I haven't told you, we've just upgraded our I Love Black People app to include a voter guide. I should have led with that, but we literally have a voter's guide now. It's on our app. You download iloveblackpeople.com/@app. You can see it, or you can go to the Google Play or go to Apple Store and download. And we have now a feature called Voter USA Voter Guide, where you can now verify if you're registered by putting your information in. You can register using our app. You can get a mail-in ballot with our app. You can do an absentee ballot with our app. And you can, of course, find the places that you need to go vote in your local area. So this is very critical because many of you, I'm sure, are registered, but it's a great tool that you can share with your friends and family and young people who may not be registered. This is a great way that you can have them use our app in order to make sure they're registered to vote. And I tell people, if you're in the battleground states, keep your registration at home and do an absentee ballot. And our app will give you the instructions. One of the things that's very important with these absentee ballots is making sure that you meet all the deadlines. That's the part that's important about these absentee ballots, is that you have to request in the right amount of time so you can receive them at the right time and be able to send them back in enough time. So the request is sometimes those people off. They don't realize that they got to request by a certain date. So with that being said, every jurisdiction, every state on I Love Black People app, you'll be able to identify what that is and be able to use our app to get registered. So that's very important. And we want to make sure that we don't lose anybody in this process. It's going to be a tight vote because of the electoral colleges. And of course, electoral colleges this antiquated system from back when the founders, the ones who started this settler colonial enterprise, they didn't necessarily have the full faith in one person, one vote. Of course, back then it would have been one man, one vote. So they came up with a system that, in many ways, disenfranchised the masses for an electoral college that would actually take the interests or will of the people and somehow cast the ballot on their behalf. And that's when people start talking about we're a republic, we're not a direct democracy, and we're ran by people who represent the masses. Even our Congress people are saying they represent our interests. We don't vote on legislation as individuals. We have people who represent us. Even if you don't vote, and even if you didn't vote or you voted for someone else, they still represent you. So it's not a direct democracy per se. But with that being said, we need to make sure that we have all the tools, because it can be very close, because there are a few states that are the toss-up states that are going to depend on who wins this election. Even though the general vote might be well for one side, the electoral colleges put a cap on it. There's only a certain amount of votes that the electoral college has for California, certain amount of votes that Texas, New York. I gave you the big names, the big large states. But then states like Utah, Idaho, they have a certain amount. So even if the population has increased, even though with all the big cities, there's just a fixed amount that California has for the electoral college. So literally, you could have more people, you can have candidates, and this has happened, where candidates win the general vote, meaning the one person, one vote, but they lose the electoral college. And that's why they always talk about how important it is to get people out to vote in the battleground states. Because even if everybody votes in California, it's blue. It means it always votes Democrat. So if the Democrats win California by one vote or 20 million votes, there's a fixed amount of electoral college which you're going to get for it. They don't get like extra if they run it, the numbers get even better. Just by having one more person that's a Democrat, vote Democrat for Kamala, she wins California. But if she wins California by 3 million, it's the same amount of electoral college votes for California with 3 million or three votes more than her opponent. So it's important that people know that, and that we're like in a position to use the information. And as we always say, in order to make good decisions, you need what? Good information. And what are the characteristics of good information? It's got to be accurate, relevant, and timely. I learned that in Howard University's MBA program. Even though I didn't finish, um, I definitely had some of the best teachers as it related to business and understanding group dynamics, um, and how to organize in those environments. So you need good information. And using our app, iloveblackpeople.com /app. You can go to Google Store, or you can go to the um, Apple Store, Google Play, or go to the Apple Store and download it and get all the information. I think that's super important for you to do. What else did we? I actually spoke at the National Black Business Conference, like their 124th anniversary. Shout out to shout out to Mayor Johnny Ford. Booker T. Washington started the Black Business League 124 years ago, and they still got a brother Ken. I should know his last name. Super awesome, and definitely going to go there again. It was in Atlanta. There's a lot going on in Atlanta. It was like a bunch of football stuff for Norfolk State and the fam, and had a lot of people there, and that was super awesome. Another good thing about the DNC, we brought the young students, but the DC delegation, Mira Bowser, 3-term, the first big city mayor to be a Black woman with 3 terms. She's amazing. Had a great delegation, great activities. The Maryland delegation had Sister Angela Alsobrooks. I attended a luncheon for her. She's running for U.S. Senate. She's currently the county executive of gorgeous Prince George's County. Super amazing sister, doing a lot. It was great to even think about, like, again, Muriel Bowser, Angela Alsabrook, Kamala Harris, these amazing Black women doing amazing things. And I know they always talk about Black women and how amazing they are. And God bless our sisters. You know, Black men don't come from Black men, they come from Black women. So we're so grateful for the Black women. And then oftentimes I hear people critiquing Black men and how much support that we give our sisters who are candidates. But I was on a call with a lot of people much smarter in politics than me, and they were talking about the issue. They want to make sure Black men come out, and I said, well, how many, like, after Black women, as it relates to those who are demographically supporting this Democratic Party that is not loyal to us and still hasn't given us our reparations, and still haven't stopped the drugs for coming in our neighborhoods, still haven't stopped the police from murdering us, and terrorizing us, and brutalizing us. Tell me, who's the second most demographic that supports the Democratic Party? Is it white women? Is it Asian women? No, it's Black men. So the truth of the story is Black women are number one in supporting the Democratic Party. This is fact. You got to be vigilant 365 days of the year, not just one day. Every day, you got to hold yourself first accountable, and then you hold everybody else, including these politicians with their politics. But with that being said, it's been a great episode. It's always great to be with you. And as I always part, I am because we are. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Help protect us from racism and xenophobia by becoming an I Love Black People ambassador today. Join on iloveblackpeople.com. No matter where you are in the world, join us today and get access to the I Love Black People network. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.